Hello, everyone. We're happy to welcome David Runtag. Today, he's a brilliant analyst who began his career with big names in the financial world, such as BlackRock and HSBC as credit analyst. He then joined the M&A world with Adventis Advisor, an independent M&A advisory firm working with international clients like PSG, Visma, with deal like from 5 to 100 millions, just to name a few, and focusing primarily on software and SaaS valuation. It's very active on LinkedIn and on the website of Aventis, so make sure to go check his work, the different articles and documents he's publishing about M&A in general, SaaS valuation, and the scene in Europe. Thank you, David.
Thank you for the intro.
All right, so maybe we can start with one question. So for how long have you been exposed to the M&A world, and what do you think is the most challenging part in it, the most exciting part?
Yeah, sure. So starting with the first question, the first time I got exposed to M&A was during my studies, my master's in finance. And then over there, I had a good understanding of the theory part. And while I was working at BlackRock, I also started doing the CFA, where especially in level 2, there is a lot of material on how M&A and investment banking in general works. So I would say I first got exposure to it from my studies. And then my first work exposure came when I was working at HSBC as a credit research analyst. Over there, I was covering the US waste management industry, where there's a lot of ongoing consolidation. So some of the big names like Waste Connections and Waste Management, they do plus 10 acquisitions every year. So I had to be pretty familiar with how it works from financial standpoint. What are the reasons behind it, and what can companies gain by acquiring other companies. And then actually I started working as an M&A advisor exactly a year ago at Adventis Advisors. And that's where I really got the real M&A experience. In terms of challenges and exciting bits, so when it comes to challenges, I'm sure most people are familiar with the typical long working hours, high cyclicality in workload, a lot of last minute changes. And we luckily didn't have this at Adventis Advisors, but I did hear from other players in the industry that sometimes the working environment can be a bit too competitive and even sometimes toxic. I would say, though, that most of these negative stereotypes are not always present in every M&A business. And at the end of the day, it really comes down to your company's culture, the people you're working with, and even to yourself. So really, like, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What is your working style? And how do you cope under stress? Some of the challenges that were more new to me, or at least I didn't think of it before joining Adventis Advisors, is that one, you shouldn't get too attached to a specific idea, a specific slide, or a specific deck, or even a specific client, because high chances you put together a deck, you think it's amazing, it's kick-ass, and then your superior looks at it and he or she is like, I don't like anything, you need to read it from scratch, start with a blank sheet of paper. So this can be quite frustrating in the beginning. And my advice is just keep an open mind and accept these changes and learn to best cope with them and look at it more as a learning opportunity. And then when it comes to clients, often you think that there's a very strong business case why this deal will make sense, but then the client just disappears or doesn't like your idea at all. So again, here you need to be very agile and just accept the fact that not everyone has the same way of thinking as you. Another more unique challenge for me was that you will face a lot of rejections when you're working with clients. So tying it together with my earlier point, often you invest a lot of time in working on a business case. You present it to the client, whether through email or whether by through a call, and then they may even never get back to you. So there's a lot of what we call in Hungarian, it's üres járat, which means like empty ride. So, you have a lot of situations where you invest a lot of time and energy into a project and then just nothing comes out of it. This was one, and another one is that it's not really a challenge, but something to keep in mind for newcomers is that I believe in this business to be successful, you need to be pretty good in remembering names, both names of companies, but also names of people. So we used to joke around that, this M&A word involves a lot of name dropping. And this can really make your life easier when you are doing a target search, that you already have a couple of names in your sleeves. You don't always start from scratch, but also when you're talking to clients. So if you're able to, list their competitors' names, list some of the people that are running this business, it will really make a difference in your credibility. And then the last one, which again, it's not necessarily a challenge, is just something to keep in mind, is that usually when people learn about M&A in a school environment, it tends to focus only on the number crunching part and the analytical part. Sometimes it touches the negotiation and the sales side as well, but usually it's very heavily focused on the numbers. But in my view, in order to be successful in this industry, you also just have to have a very strong interest in how different products and how different services work. Because when you sit down with a waste management company who wants to buy another company in Poland, for example, you really need to have a good understanding of the waste management industry. What are the different components? What are the different regulations? What are the new trends? So if you're someone who is generally not, intrigued by learning something completely new, I think it's going to be a hard field for you to work in. So these, I would say, are the key challenges that I could think of. When it comes to excitement, M&A is a very cyclical business. It's a very hard margin business. So you can take it on a lot of rides on this emotional roller coaster, and that can make it quite exciting. I would say that, in the long term, it makes sense to, or you should try to, like, again, not get too attached to specific deals, because then emotionally it can really move you up and down. So that's something to keep in mind. I also find it quite exciting that you get to work with a lot of very smart people. So both from within the industry, like other advisors, PE firms, VCs, etc. But you also get exposure to companies, founders, and it's always very interesting to listen to their story and, be inspired on how they created something out of nothing. And lastly, what I would say is that, this is specifically in my case, because Aventis Advisors is an M&A boutique. So with myself included, we were 4 people. So when you work for a small firm, of course it has its disadvantages, but it also has a lot of advantages. And in particular, what I really liked and found exciting is that you have a lot of flexibility and a lot of freedom in how you approach different tasks, how you talk to clients, how you write a blog post. So I think, you have a lot of freedom in just being creative. That's what I would say.
Amazing, amazing. What a background. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And you were mentioning, for example, that when you have to deal with company's founder, you find it very inspiring, very
Yeah.
moving sometimes. So would you say that having to deal with not only the company's founders but also all of the different people, do you think sometimes it's more like a laid back kind of environment, or like is it always stressful? What can you tell us about that?
I would say no, it's definitely not always stressful. When you talk to people from the industry, and by that I mean like other advisors, PE firms, or corporate development people from strategic buyers, it's not stressful, but you need to be more direct. So they really enjoy talking about deals. They really enjoy talking about the market. Um, Unless you're doing an in-person meeting where there's more room for chit chat, usually, in my experience, it was more like get to the point situation. However, these people are quite open to establish a connection, because at the end of the day, M&A is a relationship business. So they know that knowing each other is very valuable for them as well. When it comes to founders, it really depends. If you are trying to build a relationship with a founder who is running a very successful business, it may be more difficult because these people get approached by advisors and investors on a daily basis. So you really need to have a good story and a good message of or good reason why they should spend time on talking to you. However, I would say that with founders, it's good to establish a non-work relationship as well, because if you guys go into a deal, you will be spending a lot of time together. So if you can get a bit more personal, it will make your future work cooperation easier. And then, on this note, I would just say, like, what I find most important is don't waste people's time, whether that's an other advisor or whether that's a founder. If you're reaching out for the first time, again, have a reason why you want to talk to them and not just be like, hey, I'm David, and let's connect because you have a cool picture on LinkedIn.
So do you feel like there will be a connection with them, like maybe on like a more personal plan, or it's always just purely business and it's an exchange?
Yeah, I think everyone has their own style. I like to get more personal. So I was always aiming to have a bit of small talk in the beginning. You talk to a lot of people who are from other continents. I always ask a few questions about that. It also helps you to do a bit of research before you're talking to this person, especially if it's an important call, so that you can ask questions about their company, ask questions about their economy, and this will always help to break the ice. This is quite important. When talking to other advisors, yes, I think you can be more business oriented.
Okay.
Um, One other point that I wanted to mention, and this is one that you brought it to the table as well, saying that when you start learning about M&A in school, maybe you
Right.
have this kind of financial bias maybe, and maybe tunnel vision as well, just on the financials of a deal.
Right.
But have you already been exposed to how in this way culture can impact the success of a deal? And is it something that maybe the other advisors that you're working with are aware of? And if that's the case, how do you tackle it? Do you speak to that with founders or like companies that want to get acquired as well? I mean, my question is more like,
Yes.
is it important for you?
No, I think culture is very important, and it can be a deal breaker. So I've been part of a call where one non-European buyer, I don't want to say the country, was pitching to acquire a Polish entity. And I was part of the call when they laid down their proposals. And you could just tell that there was such a big culture difference that Polish firm was like, this is very unlikely to work out. So, culture is very important. And then another case which I remember is uh, we have a buyer from another country that is looking to buy here in a company here in Poland. And before he met the founder, he spent a lot of time searching about him, reading his interviews, watching videos with him, because you really want to be aligned on culture when you have these interactions. And yes, like I think you need to spend a lot of time in understanding different countries' cultures, even companies' culture if there's any material on that. And when at Eventis Advisors, we talk to non-Polish, especially non-European buyers to be on the sales side who are looking to acquire companies in Poland, we often say that us having a strong understanding of the Polish culture is one of our main selling points or added value. Because there is really difference in how you should talk about money, how you should talk about synergy opportunities, how you should talk about succession plans. And these are very, very important things to be aligned on when working on an M&A deal.
Okay. Especially for, I guess, cross-national deals when you have to deal with
Yes,
different companies. Okay.
yes. Yeah,
And
so like, I know that now I read this as well, that it was an article more for private equity firms, but they were talking about how doing a due diligence not only on the legal and on the financial part, but also on the human aspect is very important. And that's why now there are many of them are employing this so-called chief human resource officer at PE firms. because doing a deep dive in senior management and the employees is just as important as understanding the financials and the legal bits.
Amazing, amazing. And based on your experience, so you were stating, for example, that you've been working in Budapest as well for BlackRock. Have you witnessed, such differences in how cultures were approached, maybe on a daily basis, with the different tasks that you were assigned to, or like was it, since it stays, as well in Europe, maybe such cultural differences weren't as much driven?
I think the most common culture difference that I had exposure to is the most common one that, some regions, for example, the USA usually are more direct and to the point, and some other regions are less so. So this was something that you sometimes needed to keep in mind when working with cross-border and working in cross-border teams. But both at HSBC and especially at BlackRock, the companies did a very good job in the end of the day, treating us as one big group. So a lot of training has been implemented to make sure that we are aware of these different cultural differences or biases, and that we can still work together as a good team. So throughout my careers at these companies, it was very rare that there was a large friction because of cultural differences.
If you had, for example, to give some pieces of advice to,
Yeah.
could be M&A professionals, could be founders of company who wanted to get acquired, what would you say to them? Just to make the deal a success at the end of it.
Yeah. So for M&A advisors, I would rather give this advice to people who are looking to break into M&A. I think, in order to be successful in this field, you need to be a self-starter, an individualist, analytical, but also acquired or have the right soft skills, because you will be talking to a lot of clients, you will be talking to a lot of business partners. So you need to be comfortable in communication, sales, and negotiation. It's also important to be able to see the big picture early on, and as I said earlier, to generally be interested how different products and different services work, because it really changes your work day to day if you have a deep understanding of the industries that you're working with, whereas if you are not. I would also say that it's important to connect. As I said before, it's a relationship business. So if you have any opportunity to meet people in conferences, or for example, here in Poland, many virtual data room providers organize regular meetups. Sometimes that's wine tasting, sometimes it's playing squash on the weekend. It's very good to just go to these and then start networking, because it can help a lot in your future growth and your future career. For founders, from an M&A perspective, I think if you eventually want to sell your business, then it's important to start thinking about this process early on. So even if it's 2-3 years down the line, I believe it's valuable to have a call with an M&A advisor so that they can give you an update on what are the key KPIs that a buyer will be looking into, what are the trends that may be relevant and you should consider implementing it in your business as well. And also just like how to approach valuation and what can be a realistic payment that you would expect for your firm. So that's what I would say for funders. And then also I would say, not being against fundraising at all, but if you are considering an exit eventually, do be mindful how many fundraisings you do. Because if you have a lot of external shareholders, it may make it a challenge to sell your business, because then the buyer will have to negotiate with a lot of different parties, and those parties may have a different exit agenda than you. So that would be it.